I'm Lisa Kelly, and I'm interviewing Clyde Snider from Pinnacle Sound. Clyde, tell me, how do people normally get into sound recording?
You mean from the engineering standpoint?
Yes.
Someone to be a sound engineer? Well, normally the way that it happens is that someone who wants to do it badly enough becomes a roadie in a studio. They can get in with a studio, and they usually know very little about the recording industry, and so they get into a studio, and by setting up mics and cleaning the floors and emptying the waste baskets and everything, and then in between times they are able to talk to the engineers and things like this and learn from them how to record and from observation. And there are a lot of problems with this way, in that you're learning in one situation with one studio with one board from one engineer sometimes, and if there's several engineers, sometimes you get conflicting information from the engineers because they learned on their own, and so sometimes it's a very haphazard way of learning. But for the most part, that's been the only way to learn up till now.
Are there any schools that the curriculum is just engineering training?
Well, there are some special schools that some companies set up in recording studios. They are not very thorough. Well, they can't be, because a studio is not set up as an educational institution. It's set up as a commercial business, and so they can't devote a whole lot of time to teaching people how to be recording engineers. And so, but some of them do it on a limited basis, maybe one night a week for 6 or 12 weeks or something like this. And you get such a fundamental, limited exposure to it that way that it's really not very fulfilling. When you get out, you still have a long way to go. You're not ready to walk into an engineering position in anyone's studio. There are, however, some, now like University of Miami. University of Miami has a 4-year program where a person goes in and majors in music and minors in electrical engineering, which is very difficult two fields, but it's what is needed to operate a board necessarily. I mean, it really helps having those two areas, music and electrical engineering. It's the only one I know of a large complete university that offers a full 4-year program. There are some other schools, though, like there's a school in Nashville that offers a degree in the music business, which has nothing to do with running the board, but it has to do with the business angle of it. And then I was seeing some material on a school out in California someplace a couple of weeks ago, where I think it was a 2-year setup, but it was just purely for being a recording engineer. I forgot the name of the school now, but it looked like a pretty good thing.
Someone that graduated from, say, this school in California, could they expect to be hired then?
They could expect to be hired on a limited basis. They couldn't walk into a large studio and be the chief engineer all of a sudden, because there's still too many things that they need to learn about a particular situation and practical application. I think there's a lot of that involved in these schools, but a person could probably expect, because the recording industry is growing pretty fast right now, and a lot of little recording studios popping up all over the country, and then the big studios too are maintaining themselves. So a person with the right kind of experience and training probably could, but now a person just on the limited thing, what we were talking about earlier about coming into a studio and learning on their own, it's pretty difficult for them to go and learn and to get a job with a big studio. Then they'd have to start all over as a roadie in that studio, but they'd progress much faster.
For the average college student, what classes would you recommend that they take?
Well, they need to know something about music, and they need to know something about function of electronic equipment, or basic electronics. They need a little bit of everything. And like I say, most schools don't have a curriculum set up for a degree for that type of thing. So in most schools, they'd either have to probably major in either music or electronic engineering or something like that.
Okay, do you need a first-class license to be a sound engineer?
Not in a recording studio. You do to operate to be a sound engineer in a radio station or a television station, but in a recording studio you don't.
Okay. Are there very many women sound engineers?
I really can't speak firsthand on that, but in reading the trade magazines, I'm becoming more and more aware of women in the position of sound engineers, but it's on a very limited basis at this time. I would have expected to change, though, as time moves on.
Right now, do you think being a woman would be a disadvantage?
Probably. Now, I say that unfortunately, because it's like any other occupation that has been mostly male. It would be very difficult for a woman to break in, but I think most people who are in a responsible position in a recording studio would be willing to give a woman just the same opportunity that she would a man to do the same job.
What is the basic salary for a sound engineer?
I have no idea, because I've never checked with I just don't know what the companies are paying. It depends on whether they're in the union or you're in a union state. I have no idea what it would be.
Okay, is it very competitive?
It's competitive in that in most areas, like in this area right here, there are very few recording studios. So consequently, there are very few positions available. So in that sense, it's more competitive. We have calls all the time from people wanting to know how to get into the sound recording business that way, to become a studio engineer. Most of them are just trying to find an occupation, and some of them are serious. But if we took everyone in here who calls, we'd have a lot of people working in here, and so in that sense, it is competitive on the learning level. There are a lot of people who are wanting to learn how. There are very few people who really have the expertise and are qualified recording engineers.
For a person that would like to have his own recording studio, how much the basic cost for a studio?
Well, that depends on how much you want to get into it. To get into a big recording studio, professional recording studio, requires a lot of things, not just the equipment, the building. I mean, you can spend $250,000 on a building real fast. You can also spend nearly that much on equipment. So you're talking about $500,000 right there on a big first-class recording studio. Now, recently, or in recent years, a new type of recording studio has come into existence, and that's the semi-pro recording studio that some people consider them studios and some people don't consider them studios, but whichever people who have a desire to be a recording engineer go out and buy their own semi-pro equipment, which is much less expensive, and maybe set up a studio in their own home, and so they can get by for less than $10,000 that way. But like I say, it's not a really professional recording studio.
Looking at your board here, how many tracks can you record at the time?
We are a 16-track recording studio. We can record anything up to 16. If we have the need to go over that, we have to do what anyone with lesser tracks does in a normal situation. We have to double up tracks and put things on the same tracks and mix tracks down ahead of time. We could use 24 tracks and 32 tracks a lot of times if we had them available.
Okay, how much does it cost an average person to rent the studio?
All right, we charge by the number of tracks used. If the person comes in and just uses 1 or 2 track, like doing a voiceover or some production work, it's $40 an hour. If they use the multi-track machine up to 8 tracks, it's $70 an hour. And if they use the 16-track facility, then it's $95 an hour. And we start our charge when we're actually ready to record. We don't have a setup charge. Some studios charge from the time of your appointment. We start charging at the time we're actually ready to record until the end of the session.
How do people get in contact with you? I mean, or how do you advertise to other or to musicians that you're available to record?
Well, the main thing probably is word of mouth and reputation among musicians and musical groups in the area, in the community. It's a very difficult thing to do, to advertise on a wide scope. Some recording studios do buy radio time and television time, I'm sure. Now, there's another type of recording we do too, which is radio and television commercials. In that sense, we do advertise with the advertising agencies, direct advertisement with them, letting them know our product, what we can do, what services we provide, and what our product sounds like. Hopefully interesting them into coming into our studio to produce commercial music.
About how many people do you have come, say, in a week?
It's feast or famine. Sometimes we're just really snowed under, just can't find a free moment, and then some other times we're hanging out the front door looking up down the street wondering where everybody is. It's hard to say what the average would be. I'd have to do some research on that. And we'll run 2 or 3 sessions a week usually. Sometimes we'll go without running any during the week, and sometimes we'll have a session every day. To really be a successful studio, or what we hope to be, we'd have to have pretty full sessions every day.
For someone that would like to be a sound engineer, what is the best advice that you can offer them?
Well, you've got to want to do it. It's like, but that's like any occupation, If you don't really want to do it, you're not willing to devote yourself to it, then you have to find something else. Like I was telling you about the main way that most people do it is becoming a roadie in a studio. Well, you've got to want it pretty bad to do that for years sometimes before you can actually get your chance on the board. And so you've got to want it pretty bad and not have a whole lot of obligations that you've got to meet otherwise. Going to school and doing it, it's just a love for music. You gotta have a love for all kinds of music too. You can't just isolate one and think that all the rest of them are trash. You've got to be able to take it all when you operate the operate a recording studio. And so the best advice I can give would be a person that just, if they want to do it badly enough, just be determined to do it and go do it.
Okay. I've been interviewing Clyde Snider, and I'm Lisa Kelly.